I remember the smell of burned rubber, the sting of cold air cutting into my lungs, and the desperate voices shouting over each other. But above all, I remember the sentence that carved itself into my bones, one I didn't hear until later when the nurse finally told me. "If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." Those were my mother's words, my own mother, said while I lay crushed in a mangled car on Thanksgiving week. And that was the night everything changed: my family, my future, and the meaning of the word guardian. People often assume military life hardens you, that a Navy uniform somehow numbs you to pain. I wish that were true. At 31 years old, after 12 years serving my country, nothing prepared me for the kind of hurt that doesn't bleed, the kind that comes from home. The accident happened on a gray Wednesday evening one day before Thanksgiving. I'd just finished a long shift on base in Norfolk and was heading home to my parents' house in Chesapeake. It was supposed to be an easy drive, 40 minutes, maybe 50 with holiday traffic. I wasn't excited exactly, but I told myself I should show up. After all, Thanksgiving was the one holiday my mother insisted on making a big event, more for reputation than family. And I, like a fool who still hoped for something warm, decided to go. The sky was already spitting rain when I pulled out onto I-64. You know that kind of drizzle that makes the asphalt look like black glass, the sort that tricks your headlights into reflecting back at you? That's the kind of night it was. I tightened my grip on the wheel, turned down the radio, and told myself to focus. Traffic crawled at a steady pace. Minivans filled with kids heading to Grandma's pickup trucks, hauling grocery bags, and Pies service members like me trying to beat the worst of the storm. It felt almost peaceful for a moment until it wasn't. I spotted the truck in the next lane just as it started to fishtail. A big white Ford, the back end sliding out like a tail whipping through water. Maybe he hit a slick patch, maybe he braked too late, maybe he was checking his phone. Whatever the reason, he lost control and he was coming straight toward me. I didn't even have time to react. The impact slammed into my driver's side door with a deafening crack. The world snapped sideways, metal screamed, glass exploded. My body whipped forward, yanked back by the seatbelt, and then everything went silent like the world had been put underwater. When sound returned, it came in pieces. A horn blaring somewhere, a woman screaming, someone pounding on my window, the smell of gasoline and rain. My vision blurred in and out, and for a second I didn't know where I was. My left arm felt numb. My ribs were stabbing me every time I breathed. Ma'am, stay with me." A man's voice, not panicked but focused. "Don't move, we're getting you out." I wanted to speak, but my mouth only formed shapes, no sound. A paramedic climbed halfway through the broken doorframe, shining a light into my eyes. I remember his breath fogging in the cold air as he shouted for a stretcher. "Possible internal injuries, BP's dropping." He pressed gauze against my forehead. I hadn't even realized it was bleeding. The cold rain on my face should have felt grounding, but everything seemed far away. The world started dimming around the edges like someone turning down a dimmer switch. "Ma'am, what's your name?" I tried to answer. "Your name, ma'am, stay awake." My voice finally scraped out, Ellie. "Ellie, we're taking you to the ER. Do you have family we can call?" I whispered. "My parents, Thanksgiving." Those were my last words before everything went black. When I came to, only for a moment, I saw bright lights above me, surgical lights, cold and white. People shouting. A mask lowered over my face. My chest felt tight, and the air was too thick to pull in. I think someone said something about blood pressure crashing. Then once again, nothing. It wasn't until later that I learned what happened during the hour I was unconscious. Protocol required the hospital to contact my emergency contacts, my parents. I had never removed their names, though God knows I should have. A nurse told me later that the doctor called my mother first. It was the middle of their Thanksgiving Eve party, some fundraiser she'd been bragging about for weeks. The doctor explained I needed emergency surgery, that I had internal bleeding, a punctured lung, and possibly a ruptured spleen. He told her it was life or death. And my mother, my biological mother, laughed. "Did she really get herself into another mess?" she said. Then louder to the room full of party guests. You see what I deal with." When the doctor repeated the urgency, she sighed dramatically and said, "If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." My father wasn't any better. He told the doctor she's 31. She makes her own decisions. Don't drag us into this." Then hung up. They didn't come. They didn't sign. They didn't ask if I would live or die. Some parents bring casseroles to the ER. Mine brought indifference. But that refusal, their cold, heartless refusal, set into motion the one thing they never expected someone else stepping up. Someone who cared more about my life than the people who created me. I didn't know any of that yet. When I finally woke up for real hours later, I was in a dim hospital room hooked to monitors. My chest burned. My ribcage felt wrapped in iron. My throat was raw from the tubes. I blinked up at the ceiling tiles and tried to gather the shards of memory. At first I was just confused, then I panicked, then I saw the clipboard. The nurse noticed me stirring and walked over gently. "Easy, sweetheart. You're safe. The surgery went well." I croaked, "My parents." The nurse hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "They were contacted," she said softly, "but they didn't come." My heart cracked, but before I could speak, she added, "You did have someone here. Someone who signed for you." I frowned. "Who?" She turned the clipboard around so I could see. Under legal guardian emergency assignment was a name. A name that made no sense. A name that wasn't my parents'. A name I hadn't spoken in years. And that was when the real story began. I squinted at the clipboard, the letters swimming in and out of focus. Painkillers and anesthesia made it hard to think straight, but that name cut through the fog like a spotlight. Harold G. Bennett. For a long second it didn't register. Then my mind slowly matched it to a face, an old man with kind eyes, a crooked smile, and a stubborn way of insisting he didn't need help while clearly needing help. "Mr. Bennett," I whispered. The nurse smiled a little. "So you do know him. He insisted on being here, sat right over there most of the night." She nodded toward the visitor's chair beside my bed. A thin blanket was folded neatly over the armrest, a styrofoam coffee cup sitting in the trash. Memories stirred. I knew Harold Bennett from a volunteer program I did off base a couple of years prior, fixing up houses for aging veterans. His small one-story brick home had been on our list. The front ramp was rotting the handrail loose, and he'd been too proud to complain to anyone. I remembered kneeling on his front step in my work jeans, power drill in hand, as he tried to offer me lemonade and insisted he could still swing a hammer just fine despite his bad hip. He'd told me stories about Korea, about my grandfather who'd served too. I hadn't even known they'd been in the same unit until that day. I'd spent an extra hour making sure his ramp was solid, the screws tight, the boards level. Before I left, he'd clasped my hand with surprising strength and said, "You ever need anything, sailor, you call Old Harold. We take care of our own." Back then, I'd smiled, thanked him, and assumed it was just something older vets said. I never imagined he meant it literally. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice still raspy. "He went home to rest," the nurse said. "Didn't want to leave, but we convinced him you were stable." She hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you remember what happened?" Images flashed like broken film, the truck sliding the impact, the lights, the mask coming down. "Accident," I murmured. "Car, on the way home for Thanksgiving." "That's right," she said gently. "You're lucky, you know. Internal bleeding, a lacerated spleen, cracked ribs. We almost lost you." She adjusted a tube near my arm. If Mr. Bennett hadn't signed the consent forms, surgery would have been delayed. I swallowed, my mouth dry. My parents, they didn't sign. Her eyes darted away, and she busied herself with my IV line. That told me everything. "We reached them," she said carefully. "But they declined to be responsible. Mr. Bennett was here visiting another patient. He heard the doctor arguing on the phone and recognized your name. He stepped in." I felt something in me cave in while something else hardened. My parents declined to be responsible. The word sounded so clinical, like it was just paperwork. But underneath the truth was rotten. They'd chosen a party over my life. Champagne over surgery. Applause over their own daughter. "Did they come later?" I forced out. She shook her head. "Not yet." After a pause, she added, "We're still within the first 24 hours. Maybe they'll show up." Her tone made it clear she didn't quite believe that. I looked back at the name on the chart. New legal guardian Harold G. Bennett. It should have felt strange seeing some older man's name where my parents had been all my life. Instead, it felt right. Honestly, it felt like the first time the universe had corrected course. The days that followed blurred into a slow ache of pain, meds, vital checks, and the soft beep of monitors. My incision burned every time I shifted. Breathing too deeply sent knives through my ribs. Sleep came in fragments. But through that haze, Mr. Bennett showed up, without fail. He arrived the next afternoon with his old navy ball cap in his hand, faded frayed along the edges, and a plastic grocery bag hanging from one wrist. "You look better than they say," he announced, stepping in like he owned the place. His voice was gravelly but warm. Then again, corpsmen always exaggerate so they can feel important. I managed a weak smile. "Wrong branch, sir. This is a civilian hospital." "Doctor, corpsman, nurse, they're all miracle workers to me," he grumbled, then softened. "How you feeling, Ellie?" "Sore," I admitted, confused. He nodded, easing himself into the chair with a little grunt. "Well, you got hit by a truck and the Lord decided he wasn't done with you yet. Confusion's part of the package." The grocery bag crinkled as he set it down. "Figured you'd be sick of hospital food. Brought you some homemade chicken soup. Doctor said you're not quite ready for solids, but we can at least make this place smell like a kitchen instead of a bleach factory." Tears stung my eyes before I could stop them. It wasn't just the soup. It was the way he said we like he was in this with me. Like I wasn't alone. "Why did you sign?" I asked quietly. "You didn't have to. You barely know me." He studied my face for a long moment. "You remember what I told you when you fixed that ramp out front," he said. "That you'd call if you needed anything I said." He smiled sadly. "No, I said we take care of our own. Your granddad saved my hide more times than I can count. He talked about you, you know. Not by name, 'cause you weren't born yet. But he talked about family like it was oxygen. Said if he ever had grandkids and they ended up in uniform, he'd watch over 'em wherever he was." My throat tightened. I'd never heard that story from my parents. To them, my joining the Navy had been an embarrassment, not a legacy. "I did what any man with a spine and a conscience would do," he went on. "The doctor said you'd die without surgery. Your parents—" His jaw clenched. "I heard your mother on speaker. If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." That's what she said. Hearing it confirmed out loud hit harder than I expected. It was one thing to hear it secondhand from a nurse. Another entirely to hear it echoed by a man who signed his name where theirs should have been. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," I whispered. He shook his head. "I'm sorry you had to live with people who'd say it." We sat with that for a moment. Machines beeped. An orderly rolled a cart by outside. Down the hall, someone's TV played an old game show. "I don't understand," I said. "What kind of parents—" He sighed and leaned back, wincing at his bad hip. "Some folks care more about how things look than how things are. A daughter in uniform doesn't fit the picture they curated." He said the word curated like it tasted sour. A sick daughter, even worse. I thought about the Thanksgiving dinners of my childhood, the perfectly basted turkey, the expensive table settings, the way my mother would rehearse her toasts in the mirror. My sister Stephanie in her designer dresses. My father telling his colleagues about my girls as if we were trophies on a shelf. I also remembered the years they'd forgotten to mention I was deployed because it ruined their complete family holiday photo. Maybe this accident didn't change them, I realized. Maybe it just revealed who they'd always been. On the third day, a social worker came in with more paperwork. Her tone was kind but clinical, as she explained that legally my parents could challenge the temporary guardianship decision, but they hadn't called once. She asked if I wanted to keep Mr. Bennett as my emergency contact going forward. I looked at him. He raised his eyebrows as if to say, "Your call, kiddo." "Yes," I said firmly. "Keep him. Remove my parents from everything." The social worker nodded, making a note. "We can update your records, including medical, if you sign here." She slid a form toward me, and I scrawled my shaky signature. It felt like more than ink on paper. It felt like drawing a line in the sand, quiet but permanent. That evening, my phone buzzed on the bedside table for the first time. I hadn't even known where it was. A nurse must have dug it out of my belongings. 6 missed calls from unknown numbers. One from my sister Stephanie. No messages, no texts saying, "Are you alive?" Just silence. I stared at the screen, then turned it face down. "I'll be here tomorrow," Mr. Bennett said as he stood to leave, steadying himself on his cane. "You get some rest, Lieutenant." I managed a tired smile. "It's just Ellie right now." He shook his head. "No. You earned that rank. Don't you let anyone, family or otherwise, make you forget it." After he left, I lay there listening to the hum of the heater and the soft tick of the clock on the wall. My body hurt, but another ache was growing, a sharper, colder one. It was the beginning of something I had never felt toward my parents before, something that went beyond hurt and into a calmer, more dangerous territory. I wasn't just their disappointed daughter anymore. I was a woman who had almost died and been saved by a stranger, while her own parents turned away. And whether they knew it or not, there was going to be a reckoning. If pain has a sound, it's the slow, steady beep of a heart monitor late at night. If loneliness has a smell, it's the faint tang of antiseptic mixed with cheap cafeteria coffee drifting in from a hallway where no one is coming to see you. On my 4th morning in the hospital, sunlight cut through the blinds in narrow stripes. For the first time since the accident, the fog in my head began to lift. My body still felt heavy, stitched together with pain, but my mind, it was waking up, piecing together a picture I didn't want to look at. My parents had not visited once. No flowers, no card, no phone call, not even a text message to pretend they cared. If I closed my eyes, I could almost hear my mother's voice at her Thanksgiving party, bright, performative, dismissive. "If she dies, let me know." She probably said it with a glass of wine in her hand and a smile practiced in the mirror. The thought made my chest ache worse than the broken ribs. A soft knock sounded at my door, gentle enough it didn't hurt my head. I expected a nurse checking vitals or another round of blood pressure checks. Instead, it was Mr. Bennett wearing the same faded navy cap, a clean flannel shirt, and a small thermos in his hand. "You look better today," he said with a grin that deepened the wrinkles around his eyes. "Color's back in your cheeks. That's a win." I tried to push myself up, grimaced, and he immediately stepped closer. "Easy there, sailor. You're stitched together like a Thanksgiving turkey. Don't go tearing yourself open for my sake." I eased back against the pillow. "They say I might be able to sit up fully tomorrow." "That's good," he said, pulling up the chair. "Progress is progress." He set the thermos on the tray table. "Brought you more soup. The good kind, not the watery mess they serve on plastic trays." "You don't have to keep doing this," I said softly. "I meant it. I also didn't. I needed someone, anyone, to show up." His face twitched with a hint of sadness. "Maybe I don't have to. But I want to. And wanting to counts for something." I swallowed hard. "Thank you." We talked for a while about the weather turning colder, about his old hip acting up, about the base where he once trained before Korea. He knew the older barracks, the original gatehouse, even the diner that no longer existed, but used to serve the best biscuits on the East Coast. Listening to him was oddly grounding, a reminder that the world outside my pain still existed. A nurse came in around noon with the day's updates. My white blood cell count was stabilizing. My incision looked clean, and a physical therapist would begin gentle movement exercises soon. "Oh, and your belongings have been cataloged," she added. "Your phone, wallet, jewelry, all that. We brought them in case you want them." She handed me a Ziploc bag. My phone screen was cracked. The impact must have thrown it across the car. The metal of my dog tags was scratched raw, as though something scraped right across them. My wallet was bent, the leather warped. I powered on the phone. Notifications buzzed through, emails from work, a spam message, a missed call from the hospital itself. Then one message from my sister. It was just 3 words. Mom said no. No explanation, no concern, just those 3 words, cold as a November night. My stomach twisted. Mom said no, that was her entire contribution to my near-death experience. Not "Are you okay?" Not "We're coming." Not even "Call me," just a verdict. Mr. Bennett looked at me, reading the expression on my face. News. "Not really," I said, staring at the screen. "Just confirmation." He leaned back, sighing deeply. "That girl always seemed a bit too concerned with mirrors and not enough with people." I huffed a painful laugh. That's one way to put it. After the nurse left, a social worker knocked and stepped inside. She carried a clipboard full of papers and wore an expression that hovered between professional calm and quiet sympathy. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she said, but I need to go over the next steps for your care." "Sure," I said, "go ahead." She explained the medical plan: more scans, a few more days of monitoring, gradually increasing physical activity, but I could tell she was circling something heavier. Finally, she set her clipboard on the bed rail. "Ms. Ramirez," she began kindly, "I don't want to intrude on your family situation. But it's my duty to tell you your parents never returned our calls. Legally and emotionally, you have every right to designate someone else as your primary emergency contact." I nodded slowly. "I already did." She smiled, relieved. "I heard. Mr. Bennett here has been exceptionally cooperative and present." He grumbled, embarrassed by the praise. "Don't go making me sound like some kind of saint." "You're better than a saint," the social worker said with sincerity. "You showed up." Her words hit something soft inside me, something I had kept shielded for years. After she left, the room grew quiet. Outside, a cart rattled down the hallway. A TV in another room played a football game. Holiday decorations were taped along the nurses' station, paper turkeys with googly eyes. "You know," I said slowly, "I always thought military service taught me how to stand on my own, to depend on myself. But lying here, I don't know. Maybe I depended on the wrong people without realizing it." Mr. Bennett nodded. "Nothing wrong with depending on folks. Just make sure they're the kind who don't drop you when it counts." I thought family was supposed to be those people. He exhaled through his nose. "Families earned, not assigned at birth." That sentence settled deep in my bones. Later that evening, a doctor walked in with a clipboard, yet another clipboard, and cleared his throat. His white coat was rumpled, and he looked like he hadn't slept much. "Ms. Ramirez," he said, "we need you to see something." He handed me a printout. It was a transcript of the call he'd tried to make to my parents. Hospitals rarely share things like that, but I think even he couldn't stomach the cruelty. My mother's voice echoed from the page. "If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." The words stared back at me in black and white, undeniable and cold. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. Something inside me went still, like a pond freezing over. Mr. Bennett watched me closely. "You don't have to read that now," he said. "I need to," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to stop pretending there's someone they're not." He nodded slowly. "Then you're on the right track." By day 6, I was able to sit up with help. By day 8, I could walk a short distance with a physical therapist guiding me. Every small step felt like shoving a mountain uphill. My parents still hadn't come. But someone else did. A young sailor from my unit dropped off a card signed by my team. A retired couple from church mailed flowers. A neighbor brought a soft blanket. People I'd known for years and people I'd barely known showed their kindness in small, gentle ways. And the man who had known me least showed the most. Each act chipped away at the story I had lived my whole life, the lie that my worth depended on people who never valued me. I wasn't fully healed yet. My ribs still throbbed, my incision still pulled when I moved, my heart still felt bruised. But something new had begun forming inside me. A resolve, a quiet fire, a promise to myself. I didn't know it yet, but the moment I left that hospital would set the stage for a reckoning one my parents never saw coming. Recovery teaches you strange things about yourself, like how patience is a muscle you don't realize you have until you're forced to use it. By the second week in the hospital, I had gotten used to the stiffness in my ribs, the tugging pain around my incision, and the slow shuffle of my feet as I learned to walk in short, careful steps. But what I hadn't gotten used to was the silence from my parents. It wasn't the absence of their physical presence that hurt the most. It was the absence of any acknowledgement that I mattered. No call, no message, nothing. I used to think you couldn't lose something you never had. Turns out you can. You can grieve the mother you wanted, the father you hoped would show up, the family you kept telling yourself would get better someday. Someday never came. On my 12th day in the hospital, the nurse brought in a wheelchair so I could visit the rehabilitation floor. Mr. Bennett arrived right on time, holding a newspaper under his arm and a determined look on his face. "You ready to take a spin?" he asked. "Only if you promise not to race anyone," I said, easing into the chair. "No promises," he grinned. "If I see a fellow with one of those souped-up hospital scooters, all bets are off." He pushed me down the hallway, slow at first. The hospital was decorated with leftover Thanksgiving crafts, paper leaves, construction paper turkeys, kids' drawings taped to the walls. A volunteer group had left a stack of handmade cards for patients, each one signed, "Happy Thanksgiving. We're thankful for you." Funny, I thought. Total strangers were thankful for me. My own family couldn't be bothered. At the rehabilitation room, a physical therapist named Mara helped me stand, guiding my steps as I leaned on a walker. Every movement felt like someone was tightening invisible ropes around my ribs, but I pushed through it. Good Mara coached, slow and controlled. "You've survived worse, right?" "You have no idea," I muttered. After 30 minutes of exercises, I collapsed into the chair again, breathless and sweating. Mr. Bennett handed me a bottle of water and wiped his forehead dramatically. "Whew," he said. Watching that was exhausting. I elbowed him gently. "You're ridiculous." "Ridiculously supportive," he corrected. "Don't forget that." We stopped by the hospital courtyard on the way back. Winter light made the brick path glisten, and the trees were nearly bare. A cold breeze brushed my face. The air smelled of damp leaves and distant chimney smoke drifting from nearby houses. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet settle around me. "I don't know how to thank you," I said softly. "You don't thank family," he replied. "You just show up for them when it's their turn." I opened my eyes. "Is that what this is, family?" He looked out toward the trees. "Family ain't blood, it's whoever refuses to walk away." Something inside me cracked open, a mix of grief, gratitude, and a longing I'd never admitted out loud. Before I could say anything else, a voice called from behind us. "Excuse me, Miss Ramirez?" A nurse hurried toward us, holding a tablet. "You have a visitor request." My heart stuttered. For a second, just one, I wondered if it might be them. Maybe finally after nearly 2 weeks. "Your sister," the nurse said. The breath I'd been holding escaped in a slow, tired sigh. Stephanie. Of course it was her. It was always her, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one my mother displayed the way people display fine china they never actually use. I nodded. "Send her in." They wheeled me back to my room. My sister was already standing inside, her arms crossed, her designer coat draped over her shoulders, like she was posing for a magazine shoot rather than visiting her injured sibling. "Wow," she said flatly. "You look rough." "Good to see you too," I replied. She sat in the chair Mr. Bennett usually used. I instinctively reached for the blanket he kept folded on it, as if to preserve something of his presence. "Mom wanted me to stop by," she said. "She's been stressed out." I blinked slowly. "She's been stressed out." "Well, yeah, the whole thing has made her look bad." "Made her look bad?" "Not she's worried about you, not she feels awful, just reputation." Stephanie picked at a spot of lint on her sleeve. "She said you're blowing things out of proportion. She was in the middle of hosting a very important event. She couldn't just drop everything." I stared at her. "I was dying, Steph." She rolled her eyes. "Doctors exaggerate. You know how hospitals are. They just want signatures." Something in my chest hardened. They didn't want signatures. They wanted consent to keep me alive. Mom said no. Stephanie waved dismissively. She said she didn't have time. That's not the same thing. "It is exactly the same thing," I said quietly. She huffed. "Anyway, she asked me to tell you that you can come home whenever you're discharged. She's planning a Christmas brunch and wants everyone to look put together. So try to, I don't know, heal fast." There it was again, my value reduced to decor. "Stephanie," I said, "why did you really come?" She hesitated. "Then Mom and Dad don't want to deal with the hospital bills. They asked if you could make sure everything gets covered by your military insurance. It's just easier if you handle it." My stomach twisted. "I almost died," I whispered. She shrugged. "Well, Christmas is coming." For the first time in my life, I felt nothing toward her. No jealousy, no longing, no frustration, just emptiness. "I need you to leave," I said calmly. She raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" I said, "Leave, I'm tired." "Wow." She stood slinging her purse over her shoulder. "You've become dramatic since joining the Navy. No wonder Mom says." "Goodbye, Stephanie." Something in my tone must have hit her because she walked out without another word. Mr. Bennett slipped in a few seconds later as if he'd waited outside. "That bad, huh?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "Worse." He closed the door gently behind him. "Then listen to me, Ellie. You're building a new life now. A new definition of family. A new sense of worth. You survived that accident for a reason. What reason, I asked, feeling small. To stop letting people treat you like a footnote in your own story. I felt tears well up, not from pain but from truth. He squeezed my shoulder lightly. Rest now. You'll need your strength. You're going home soon. I didn't know then that he was right, not just about my recovery but about something else. Going home didn't mean going back. It meant going forward to a confrontation that had been 12 years overdue. Discharge day came with a mix of relief and nerves. 2.5 weeks in a hospital bed felt like an eternity, long enough for resentment to settle into my bones, long enough for gratitude to carve its own space beside it. My body wasn't healed, not by a long shot, but my spirit. It felt sharper, clearer, like someone had taken a blurry photo of my life and finally brought it into focus. The doctor signed the final paperwork, handed me a packet of instructions, and said, "Take it slow. No heavy lifting, no sudden movements, and absolutely no stress if you can avoid it." I almost laughed. No stress. I was about to go back to the two people who caused most of the stress I'd ever known. Mr. Bennett wheeled me to the hospital entrance, despite my insistence that I could walk a little. "Not on my watch," he said. "If you fall, they'll blame me, and I'm too old to fight anyone in court." He helped me into his car, an old Buick that smelled faintly of peppermint and pine-scented air freshener. As he drove, he kept glancing over at me. "You nervous?" he finally asked. "A little," I admitted. "I'm going back into the lion's den." "You're not going back," he corrected. "You're confronting it. Big difference." I nodded, watching the neighborhoods pass by, the modest brick homes, the bare trees rattling in the cold wind, the American flags hanging limp on front porches. It all felt familiar and foreign at the same time. "Are you sure you're up for this post-Thanksgiving dinner thing?" he asked gently. "I need to be," I said. "They made sure the whole family knew they were handling everything with such strength. I won't let their version be the only one out there." He gave a low whistle. "You've got steel in you, Ellie. Your granddad would be proud." The compliment warmed me even through the cold knot of dread forming in my stomach. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, the house looked almost exactly as I remembered it. Big wreath on the door, inflatable snowman already on the lawn, soft yellow lights along the roofline. Perfect. Polished. Deceptively welcoming. A cluster of cars lined the street, uncles, aunts, cousins, neighbors, my mother's favorite audience. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Mr. Bennett asked. I swallowed hard. "I don't know." "You don't have to be brave alone," he said softly. "But this part I needed to start it myself." "No," I said finally, "but stay close, just in case." He nodded and stayed in the car engine, idling, watching me with worried eyes. I walked slowly toward the house, each step sending a dull ache through my ribs. My hand hovered over the door for a second before I pushed it open. Warmth and noise crashed into me, clinking dishes, bursts of laughter, the hum of conversation. The smell of ham and sweet potatoes and brown sugar-glazed carrots drifted through the air. A holiday scene straight out of a commercial. And not one person noticed me enter. My mother was at the center of the living room, laughing a little too loudly at one of her own stories. My father stood near the fireplace, swirling a glass of brandy. Stephanie sat on the couch, scrolling her phone, legs crossed like she was modeling a shoe advertisement. I cleared my throat softly. Nothing. Then a cousin turned, eyes widening. "Ellie, you're walking." The room quieted. Heads turned, mouths fell slightly open. My mother's smile froze before she replaced it with something artificial. "Oh, you're here, good, good, come in," she said, waving her hand like inviting a stray dog inside. My father added, "You look fine. See, doctors always exaggerate." I inhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. "I need to talk to everyone." "Oh, for heaven's sake," my mother groaned. "Can't you save the drama for later? We're having dessert soon." My cousin, bless her, asked quietly, "Ellie, are you okay?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the hospital's printed transcript. The letter. The one I didn't want to use but had to. I held it in my trembling hand. "I wasn't okay," I said. "I wasn't okay at all." My voice cracked, not from weakness but from truth. "I almost died." A ripple went through the room. My father scoffed. "Don't be theatrical." I opened the letter and read aloud. "If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." A collective gasp rose from the crowd. My mother's face drained of color. How dare you bring that here? How dare I repeated, stunned. You said it, I didn't make it up. That wasn't meant to be taken literally, she snapped. The doctor caught me at a bad moment. I was dying, I said, my voice rising despite the pain ripping through my ribs. There's no good moment for that call. Stephanie crossed her arms. Mom was overwhelmed. She had guests. Aunt Susan whispered guests. Her daughter was in surgery. Uncle Ray looked furious. You refused to sign. What the hell is wrong with you? My mother's lips trembled. It was chaotic. You don't understand. I understand completely, I said quietly. I understand perfectly. Then I held up the second sheet, the official medical record showing who signed in their place. While you were hosting your party, I said, voice steadier now, someone else stepped up. Someone who barely knew me. Someone who didn't hesitate. I placed the page gently on the table. New legal guardian, Harold G. Bennett. My mother gasped. You let some old stranger sign for you? That's irresponsible. He saved my life, I shot back. You abandoned it. The room fell dead silent. My father cleared his throat. This is all very dramatic, but... No, I said. Not this time. You don't get to rewrite what happened. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. My vision blurred, but I stood my ground. I'm done pretending we're something we're not. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. My father looked furious, not apologetic, but embarrassed. Stephanie muttered, Why are you making such a big deal out of this? That was the final straw. Because I said, feeling my voice steady like an anchor dropping, I almost didn't make it home for Thanksgiving. And the people who created me chose a party over my life. Aunt Linda wiped her eyes. Ellie, sweetheart. I shook my head. I'm not looking for sympathy. I just needed the truth to be heard. My mother took a step closer. So what happens now? You punish us by embarrassing us in front of our family. No, I said, I set boundaries. I took a breath. From this moment on, you are not my emergency contacts. You are not my decision makers. You are not the people I depend on. That role belongs to someone who earned it. I felt Mr. Bennett's presence behind me. I didn't even have to turn around to know he had entered. His quiet strength filled the room like a warm light. My mother spun toward him, her voice sharp. You had no right. He cut her off with a calm, steady tone. I had every right to save a good woman when her own family wouldn't lift a finger. My mother's face flushed red. I straightened my shoulders. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to close a chapter. The room held its breath. I'm going home, I said. To my home. And for the first time in my life, leaving that house didn't feel like running away. It felt like walking toward myself. There's something strangely liberating about walking out of the house you grew up in, and realizing maybe for the first time that it no longer owns any part of you. Not your fear, not your worth, not your guilt, just memories. And memories can be rewritten by truth. Truth and choice. The cold air hit my face the moment I stepped outside. I inhaled deeply, wincing at the ache in my ribs, but feeling more alive than I had in years. The muffled voices inside my mother's panicked whispers, my father's snide excuses, relatives murmuring in disbelief faded behind the door like background noise to a show I no longer needed to watch. Mr. Bennett was waiting on the porch. He gave me a small nod as if asking, You sure? I nodded back, more sure than I'd ever been. He offered his arm not because I looked weak, but because he understood what support really meant. I took it, and together we walked to his car. Once inside, I exhaled shakily. Well, I said that went exactly as badly as expected. He chuckled. Could have gone worse. No one threw cranberry sauce. I laughed, then winced. Don't make me laugh. My ribs hate you. He started the engine. Your ribs will forgive me. Not sure your parents will forgive themselves, though. I stared out the window as we pulled away. They'll spin it. They always do. Give it a week, they'll have a brand new version of the story. Something like Ellie made a fuss because she was emotional from the anesthesia. He gave me a side eye. Do you care what story they tell? I surprised myself with the answer. No, I said. Not anymore. Mr. Bennett insisted I stay at his place for a few days until I felt strong enough to return to base housing. I resisted at first, not wanting to impose, but he waved off every protest. You think I'm going to leave you alone after all that, he scoffed. You'll stay in the guest room. Worst thing you'll have to deal with is my snoring. His house was small, warm, and filled with things that made sense, framed photos from his service days, a shelf of old Navy caps, a recliner that looked like it had survived 3 decades of football games. While I settled into the guest room, he set a pot of stew on the stove and hummed an old tune. I felt something crack open in my chest, something painfully tender. This was what a home felt like. Not expensive decorations, not perfect table settings, not photo-ready facades. Just presence, just care. And it hit me I had never once experienced this under my parents' roof. Later that evening he knocked on my door. Mind a little company? Of course not, I said. He sat carefully on the edge of a nearby chair. Got something for you. He handed me a small worn piece of metal. I recognized it instantly. A military challenge coin, but not just any coin, my grandfather's. You kept this, I breathed. Carried it with me since Korea, he said. Your granddad gave it to me after a nasty mission. Told me if I ever found his kin I should look out for them. I swallowed hard. He said that he meant it too. He looked at me with soft eyes. And I think he'd want you to have it now. I closed my fingers around the coin, feeling the weight of legacy and love I didn't know I had. Thank you, I whispered. He smiled. We take care of our own. The next few days were quiet but healing. I took slow walks around his backyard, breathing in the crisp air. I sat at his kitchen table while he read the newspaper aloud. I even smiled, really smiled, when he yelled at the TV during a football game like the players could hear him. But my peace didn't last. On the morning of the 4th day, my phone rang. The screen lit up with my mother's number. Mr. Bennett looked at me. You don't have to answer. I think I should, I said. I put the phone on speaker. My mother's voice burst through immediately, high, frantic, defensive. Eleanor, I can't believe what you did to us. Do you know the calls we've been getting? The messages? The embarrassment? Your little stunt humiliated us in front of the entire family. I felt absolutely nothing. Mom, I said calmly, I told the truth. You aired private family matters. You refused to authorize life-saving surgery. That's not the point, she snapped. You should have given us a chance to explain. To explain what I asked, my voice steady. That a fundraiser was more important than your daughter bleeding out. Silence. Then she hissed, Your father and I demand you retract what you said. No. Her breath caught. Excuse me? No, I repeated. I'm not protecting your image anymore. I'm protecting myself. You're being dramatic, she snapped. And you're being cruel. Her voice wavered, then cracks forming in the performance. You don't understand how stressful that night was. I wanted to laugh. I understand perfectly. You were inconvenienced. I was dying. She scoffed, but I heard something underneath panic. I need you to come home, she said suddenly. We're having a Christmas brunch. It's important. I'm not your centerpiece, I replied. I'm not an ornament you hang when it suits your image. You're our daughter. No, I said softly. I'm your daughter by DNA, that's all. She gasped. You're choosing that old man over us. I looked at Mr. Bennett, who pretended not to listen but whose eyes were shining with worry and something like pride. I'm choosing the person who showed up, I said. I ended the call, blocked the number, sat there breathing hard. Mr. Bennett nodded slowly. Good, he said. Sometimes closing a door is the only way to keep the cold out. I smiled faintly. Did you come up with that just now? No, he smirked. It was in a fortune cookie once. I laughed, and surprisingly it didn't hurt. A week later, my doctor cleared me to return to base housing. My body was healing, but something deeper had healed faster, the part of me that believed love must be earned by suffering for it. The day I packed my things, Mr. Bennett insisted on helping, even though I could manage most of it myself. You sure you'll be all right? He asked. I will, I said. And I'm not disappearing. You're stuck with me whether you like it or not. He grinned. Good. I've grown fond of your smart mouth. When he hugged me gently, mindful of my ribs, I felt something settle into place. Family wasn't who raised you. Family was who stood with you when the ground fell away. I didn't know what awaited me next, what Christmas would bring, what my parents might say, or whether reconciliation was possible. But I knew this. I was no longer the daughter who needed their approval. I was the woman who survived without it. And sooner than anyone expected, The reckoning wasn't quite over. Christmas that year didn't look anything like the glossy cards my mother used to send. No matching outfits, no staged fireplace photos, no long letter about our successful family. Just my small Norfolk apartment, a cheap plastic tree paper plates, and a retired sailor muttering about the lights. 2 sailors from my unit who couldn't afford to fly home came over. So did a widowed neighbor who usually spent holidays alone. I cooked what my healing body could handle: a small ham-boxed stuffing, canned cranberry sauce, a pumpkin pie with a crack down the center. It wasn't impressive, it was honest. We crowded around my wobbly little table. Someone had stuck a tiny American flag in a jar in the corner. The room smelled of cinnamon ham and artificial pine. One of the sailors, Parker, raised his plastic cup. To Lieutenant Ramirez, he said, "Toughest woman I know." I shook my head. "Flattery will not get you out of PT." Then Mr. Bennett lifted his cup. To Ellie, he said, voice rough but steady, "Proof that blood may start a family, but it doesn't have to finish it." The room went quiet. I felt my eyes sting. To found family I managed, to the people who show up when it matters. We clinked cups. For a moment I just looked at their faces, tired, kind, a little awkward, and realized this small circle felt more like home than my parents' big house ever had. After everyone left, the apartment fell quiet. I sat on the couch with a blanket over my lap. Mr. Bennett took the recliner, the TV playing an old black and white movie. The Christmas lights blinked lazily on the crooked tree. He cleared his throat. "You know," he said, "one of these days your folks might call. Guilt's a stubborn thing." "I know," I said. "What are you going to do if they do?" I turned my grandfather's challenge coin in my hand, feeling the worn edges. "I'm done chasing them," I said. "If we ever talk again, it'll be on equal ground. I've got my own table now." He nodded. "Good. That's what wearing that uniform is supposed to teach you, too." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed on the end table. "Unknown number." "Spam?" he asked. "Maybe," I said, "maybe my past." I answered and put it on speaker. "Hello?" It was my father. "Ellie," he said, "it's me." For once I let the silence sit. "We heard you weren't spending Christmas with anyone," he went on. "Your mother thought maybe you'd want to come by." I looked around at the dirty dishes, the leftover pie, the cheap tree, the old sailor watching me like he'd back whatever choice I made. "I'm not alone," I said. "I had people here. We just finished dinner." "Oh," he said, thrown. "That's good." He cleared his throat. "Your mother hasn't been herself. This has been very hard on her." The old script again. "Dad," I said quietly, "I almost died." The line went still. "The hospital called you," I continued. "You both refused to sign. You didn't come. You chose a party over your daughter. I'm not saying that to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true." He let out a shaky breath. "I don't have an excuse," he said at last. "I failed you." Hearing it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like standing in the ruins and finally naming what broke. "Yes," I said steady, "you did." "I don't know how to fix this," he whispered. "You don't fix it with one call or one brunch," I replied. "If you ever want a relationship with me, it starts with showing up. Quietly, consistently, no audience, no performance." He paused. "I don't know if your mother can do that." "Then maybe it has to start with you," I said. Another pause. "Then would you be willing to talk again sometime, just you and me? No promises, just talk." The younger me would have grabbed that and run. The woman holding the phone now owed that girl better. "I'll think about it," I said. "But I won't go back to the old pattern. I won't be your prop." "That's fair," he said softly. "Merry Christmas, kiddo." The nickname still tugged. This time I answered it as an equal. "Merry Christmas, Dad," I said. "Good night." I ended the call. I waited for the familiar, shaking the guilt, the urge to dial back. It didn't come. Instead, I felt steady, not finished, not healed, but standing on my own feet. "You did good," Mr. Bennett said. "I don't know if I forgave him," I replied. "Forgiveness is a road," he said. "Tonight you took a step. That's plenty." I looked at the blinking lights, at the coin in my palm, at the man who had signed for my life like it was the most natural thing in the world. My scars still ached, but they no longer defined me. They were just part of the map that led here. People think revenge is all fire and slam doors. Maybe sometimes it is. But my revenge turned out quieter. My revenge was learning to live well anyway. It was building a life where my parents' worst choice didn't get the final word. It was choosing people who showed up in hospital corridors and cramped apartments, not just in holiday photos. It was becoming the kind of adult my younger self needed, even if my parents never change. So, if you're listening to this and any of it feels uncomfortably familiar, hear this. You are allowed to choose your family. You are allowed to set boundaries with people who keep hurting you, even if they share your last name. You are allowed to say this was wrong and still leave a small door open for something better. And if someone quietly stepped in when others stepped away, maybe a neighbor, a teacher, a friend, a gruff old veteran, don't take that for granted. Call them. Thank them. If you'd like to hear more stories about honor hard choices and the families we build for ourselves, you can follow along. Share this with someone who might need it, or simply come back for the next one. Thank you for spending this time with me. 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 This time with me.